The Christian in Complete Armor by William Gurnall. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 13. Chapter 5. The words opened, and what is meant by the evil day. That you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done, etc. We come to the argument with which the apostle urges the exhortation, and that is double. The first hath respect to the hour of battle, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day. The second to the happy issue of the war, which will crown the Christian thus armed, and that is certain victory, and having done all, to stand. First, the first, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day. But what is this evil day? Some take this evil day to comprehend the whole life of a Christian here below, in this vale of tears, and then the argument runs thus: take to yourselves the whole armor of God, that you may be able to persevere to the end of your life, which you will find, as it were, one continued day of trouble and trial. Thus Jacob draws a black line over his whole life. Few and evil have the days of my life been. Genesis chapter 47. What day shines so fair that overcasts not before night? Nay, in which the Christian meets not with some shower or other, enough to deserve the name of an evil day? Every day hath its portion, yea, proportion. Sufficient is the evil of the day. We need not borrow and take up sorrows upon use of the morrow to make up our present load, as we read of daily bread, so of a daily cross. Luke chapter 9, verse 24, which we are bid to take, not to make. We need not make crosses for ourselves. We are, and as we are prone to do, God in His providence will provide one for us, and we are bid to take it up. But we hear nothing of laying it down to a cross, and we lie down together. Our troubles in our lives are coexistent, live and die together. Here, when joy comes, sorrow is at its heel. Staff and rod go together. Job himself, whose prosperity the devil so grudged, and set forth in all his bravery and pomp, Job 1:10, as if his gun had no shadow. Here, what account this good man gives of this his most flourishing time. Chapter 3, verse 26. I was not in safety, neither had I rest, neither was I quiet. There were some troubles that broke his rest when his bed was to thinking so oft as heart could wish. Even now this good man tosses and tumbles from one side to the other, and is not quiet. If one should have come to Job and blessed him with his happy condition, and said, Surely, Job, thou couldst be content with what thou hast for thy portion, if thou mightest have all this settled on thee, and thy heirs after thee, he would have said, as once Luther, that God should not put him off with these. Such is the saint's state in this bottom, that their very life here and all the pompous entertainments of it are their cross, because they detain them from their cross. We need nothing to make our life an evil day more than our absent from our good, our chief good, which cannot be recompensed by the world, nor enjoyed with it. Only this goodness there is in this evil, that it is short. Our life is but an evil day. It will not last long, and sure it was mercy that God hath abridged so much of the term of man's life in these last days, wherein so much of Christ in heaven are discovered, that it would have been the saints' patient hard to it to have known so much of the upper world's glory, than be kept so long from it as the fathers in the first age were. Oh, comfort one another, Christians, with this. Though your life be evil with troubles, yet it is short. A few steps and you are out of the rain. There is a great difference between a saint in the regards of the evil he meets with, and the wicked, as two travelers riding contrary ways, both taken in the rain and wet. But one rides with the rain, and so it's soon out of the shower, but the other rides into the rainy corner. The further he goes, the worse he is. The saint meets with troubles as well as the wicked, but he is soon out of the shower. When death comes, he has fair weather, but as for the wicked, the further he goes, the worse. What he meets with here is but a few drops. The great storm is the last. The pouring out of God's wrath shall be in hell, where all the depths of horror are opened, both from above of God's righteous fury, and from beneath of their own accusing and tormenting consciences. Secondly, others take the phrase in a more restrained sense to denote those particular seasons of our life wherein more especially we meet with afflictions and sufferings. Beza reads it tempora adverso, in the time of our adversary, though our whole life be evil, if compared with heavenly blissful state, our clearest day, night to that glorious morning, yet one part of our life compared with another may be called good and the other evil. We have our vicissitudes here. The providences of God to his saints here, while on this low bottom of earth, are mixed and party-colored, as was signified by the speckled horses and Zacharias' vision, Zechariah 1:8. Red and white, peace and war, joy and sorrow checker our days. Earth is the middle place between heaven and hell, and so is our state here. It partakes of both. We go uphill and downhill till we get to our journey's end. Yea, we find the deepest slough nearest to our Father's house. Death, I mean, into which all the other troubles of our life fall, as streams into some great river, and with which they all end, and are swallowed up. This being the comprehensive evil I conceive to be meant here, being made remarkable by a double article. That day, that evil day, not excluding those other days of tribulation which intervene. These are but so many petty deaths, every one snatching away a piece of our lives with them, and or like pages sent before to usher in this king of terrors that comes behind. The phrase being open, let us consider the strength of the first argument with which the apostle reinforces his exhortation of taking to ourselves the whole armor of God in that consists in three weighty circumstances. First, the nature and quality of this day of affliction. It is an evil day. Secondly, the unavoidableness of this evil day of affliction, implied in the form of speech, that you may withstand an evil day. He shuts out all hope of escaping, as if he had said, you have no way but to withstand. Please not yourself with thoughts of shunning battle. The evil day must come, be you armed or not armed. Thirdly, the necessity of this armor to withstand, as we cannot run from it, so not bear up before it, and oppose the force which will be made against us, except clad with armor. These would afford several points, but for brevity we shall lay them together in one conclusion. End of chapter 5, having been read by Peter John Parisius. None of my audios are copyrighted. Please feel free to make as many copies as you desire to the glory of God. The Christian in Complete Armor by William Gurnall. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 13. Chapter 6. Show that the day of affliction is evil, and in what respects, as also unavoidable, and why to be prepared for it. Doctrine. It behooves everyone to arm and prepare himself for the evil day of affliction and death, which unavoidably he must conflict with. The point hath three branches. First, the day of affliction and death in an evil day. Secondly, this evil day is unavoidable. Thirdly, it behooves everyone to provide for this evil day. First, of the first branch, the day of affliction, especially death, is an evil day. Here we must show how affliction is evil and how not. First, it is not mortally or intrinsically evil. If it were evil in this sense, first, God could not be the author of it. His nature is so pure that no such evil can come from him any more than the sun's light can make night. But this evil of affliction he vouches for his own act. Against this family do I devise an evil, Micah 3:2. Yet more, he appropriates it so to himself as that he will not have us think any can do us evil besides himself. It is the prerogative he glories in, and there is no evil in the city, but it is of his doing. Amos 3:6. And well it is for the saints that their crosses are all made in heaven. They would not else be so fitted to their backs as they are. But for the evil of sin he disowns it with a strict charge, that we lay not this brat, which is begotten by Satan, upon our impure hearts at his door. Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. James 1:13. Secondly, if affliction were intrinsically evil, it could in no respect be the object of our desire, which sometimes it is and may be. We are to choose affliction rather than sin, yea, the greatest affliction before the least sin. Moses chose affliction with the people of God rather than the pleasures of sin for a season. We are bid to rejoice when we fall into divers temptations, that is, afflictions. But in what respects, then, may the day of affliction be called evil? First, as it is grievous to sense. In Scripture, evil is oft put in contradictions to joy and comfort. We look for peace and behold no good. A merry heart is called a good heart, and a sad spirit an evil spirit, because nature hath an abhorrency to all that opposes its joy, and this every affliction doth more or less. No affliction, while present, is joyful but grievous. Hebrews 10:11. It hath like physic an unpleasing farewell to the sense. Therefore Solomon, speaking of the evil days of sickness, expresses them to be distasteful to nature, that we shall say, we have no pleasure in them. They take away the joy of our life. Natural joy is a true flower of the sun of prosperity. It opens and shuts with it. It is true indeed the saints never have more joy than in their affliction, but this comes in upon another score. They have a good God that sends it in, or else they would be as sadly off as others. It is no more nature for comfort to spring from afflictions than for grapes to grow on thorns or manna in the wilderness. The Israelites might have looked long enough for such bread if heaven had not miraculously rained it down. God chooses this season to make the omnipotency of his love the more conspicuous. As Elijah, to add to the miracle, first caused water in abundancy to be poured on the wood and sacrifice so much as to fill the trench, and then bring fire from heaven by his prayer to lick it up. Thus God pours out the flood of affliction upon his children, and then kindles that inward joy in their bosoms which licks up all their sorrow. Yea, he makes the very waters of affliction they flowed on add a further sweetness to the music of their spiritual joy. But still, it is God that is good, and affliction that is evil. Secondly, the day of affliction is an evil day, as it is an unwelcome remembrancer of what sinful evils have passed in our lives. It revives the memory of the old sins, which, it may be, were buried many years ago in the grave of forgetfulness. The night of affliction is the time when such ghosts used to walk in men's consciences. And as the darkness of the night adds to the horror of any fearful object, so does the state of affliction, which is itself uncomfortable, add to the terror of our sins then remembered. Never did the patriarchs' sin look so ghastly on them as when it recoiled upon them in their distress. Genesis chapter 42, verse 21. The sinner then hath more real apprehensions of wrath than at another time. Afflictions approximate judgment. Yea, it is interpreted by him as a pursuivant sent to call him presently before God, and therefore must beget a woeful confusion and consternation in the spirit. Oh, that men would but think how they could bear the fight of their sins and a rehearsal sermon of all their ways in that day. That is the blessed man indeed, who can with the prophet then look on them and triumph over them. This indeed is a dark parable, as he calls it. Few can understand it. As Psalms chapter 49, verse 4 and 5, I will open my dark saying upon the harp. Wherefore should I fear in the day of evil, when the iniquity of my heels compass me about? Thirdly, the day of affliction makes discovery of much evil to be in the heart, which was not seen before. Affliction shakes and exposes the creature, and if any sediment be at the bottom, it will appear then. Sometimes it discovers the heart to be quite naught, that before had some seeming good. These suds wash off the hypocrite's paints. When corrupt nature is vexed, it shows itself, and some afflictions do that to purpose. We read of such as are offended when persecution comes. They fall quite out from their profession because it puts them to such cost and trouble. Others, in their distress, that curse their God. Isaiah 8:21. It is impossible for the naughty heart to think well of afflicting God. The hireling, if his master takes up a staff to beat him, throws down his work and runs away. And so doth a false heart serve God. Yea, even where the person is gracious, corruption is often found to be stronger and grace is weaker than they were thought to be. Peter, who sets out so valiantly at first to walk on the sea, the wind doth by rage rise, and he begins to sink. Now he sees there was more unbelief in his heart than he before suspected. Sharp afflictions are to the soul as a driving rain to the house. We know not that there are such crannies and holes in the house till we see it drop down here and there. Thus we perceive not how unmortified this corruption, not how weak that grace is, till we are thus searched and made more fully to know what is in our hearts by such trials. This is the reason why none have such humble thoughts of themselves and such pitiful and forbearing thoughts towards others in their infirmities as those who are most acquainted with afflictions. They meet with so many foils in their conflicts as make them carry a low sail in respect of their own grace and a tender respect to their brethren, more ready to pity than censure them in their weaknesses. Fourthly, this is the season when the evil one, Satan, comes to tempt. What we find called the time of tribulation, Matthew 13:22, we find in the same parable, Luke 8:13, called the time of temptation. Indeed, they both meet. Seldom doth God afflict us, but Satan addeth temptation into our wilderness. This is your hour, saith Christ, and the power of darkness. Luke 22:53. Christ's sufferings from man and temptation from the devil came together. Esau, who hated his brother for the blessing, said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I kill my brother. Genesis chapter 28, verse 41. Times of afflictions are the days of mourning, though Satan waits to do us a mischief in. Fifthly and lastly, the day of affliction hath oft an evil event in issue, and in this respect proves an evil day indeed. All is well, we say, that ends well. The product of afflictions in the Christian is good. The rod with which they are corrected yields their peaceable fruit of righteousness, and therefore they can call their afflictions good. That is a good instrument that lets out only the bad blood. It was good for me that I was afflicted, saith David. I have read of a holy woman who used to compare her afflictions to her children. They both put her to great pain in the bearing, but as she knew not which of her children to have been without, for all the trouble in the bringing forth, so neither which of her afflictions she could have missed, notwithstanding the sorrow they put her to in the enduring. But to the wicked the issue is sad. First, in regard of sin, they leave them worse, more impenitent, hardened in sin and outrageous in their wicked practices. Every plague on Egypt added to the plague of hardness on Pharaoh's heart. He that for some while could beg prayers of Moses for himself at last comes to that pass that he threatens to kill him if he came to him any more. Oh, what a prodigious height do we see many come to in sin after such great sickness or other judgment. Children do not more shoot up in their bodily stature after an ague than they in their lust after afflictions. Oh, how greedy and ravenous are they after their prey, when they once get off their clog and chain from their heels. When physic works not kindly, it doth not only leave the disease uncured, but the poison of the physic stays in the body also. Many appear thus poisoned by their affliction, by the breaking out of their lust. afterwards. Secondly, in regard of sorrow, every affliction on a wicked person produces another, and that a greater than itself. The greatest wedge comes at last, which shall cleave him fit for the fire. The sinner is whipped from affliction to affliction, as a vagrant from constable to constable, till at last he comes to hell, his proper place and settled abode, where all sorrows will meet in one that is endless. The second branch of the point follows. The evil day is unavoidable. We may as well stop the chariot of the sun when posting to night and chase away the shades of the evening as escape this hour of darkness that is coming upon us all. None have power over the spirit to retain it, neither hath he power in the body of death, and there is no discharge in that war, is Ecclesiastes 8:8. Among men it is possible to get off where pressed for the wars by pleading privileges of years, estate, weakness of the body, protection from the prince, and the like. Or if all these fail, possibly the sending another in our room, or a bribe given to the hand may serve the turn. But in this war the press is so strict that there is no dispensation. David could willingly have gone for his son. We hear him crying, "Would God I had died for thee, O Absalom, my son, my son." But he will not be taken. That young gallant must go himself. He must in our own person come into the field and look death in the face. Some indeed we find so fond as to promise themselves immunity from this day, as if they had an ensuring office in their breasts. They say they have made a covenant with death and with hell. They are at an agreement. When the overflowing scourge shall pass through, it shall not come upon them. And now like debtors they have fed the sergeant. They walk abroad boldly and fear no arrest. But God tells them, as fast as they bind he will loose. Your covenant with death shall be disannulled, and your agreement with hell shall not stand. And how should it, if God will not set his seal to it? There is a divine law for this evil day which came in force upon Adam's first sin, that laid the fatal knife to the throat of mankind, which hath opened a sluice to let out his heart blood ever since. God, to prevent all escape, hath sown the seeds of death in our very constitution and nature, so that we can as soon run from ourselves as from death. We need no fellow to come with a hand of violency and hew us down. There is in the tree a worm which grows out of its own substance that will destroy it. So in us those infirmities of nature that will bring us down to the dust. Our death was bred when our life was first conceived, and as a breeding woman cannot hinder the hour of her travail, that follows in nature upon the other, so neither can man hinder the bringing forth of death, with which his life is big. All the pains and arches man feels in his life are but so many groans of dying nature. They tell him his dissolution is at hand. Art thou a prince, sitting in all thy state and pomp? Death dare enter thy palace and come through all thy guards to deliver the fatal message it hath from God to thee, yea, run its dagger to thy heart. Wert thou compassed with a college of doctors consulting thy health, art and nature must deliver thee up when thou comes. Even when thy strength is firmest, and thou eatest thy bread with a merry heart, that thy very food which nourished thy life gives thee withal an earnestness of thy death, as it leaves those drugs in thee which will in time procure the same. Oh, how unavoidably must this evil day of death be, when that very staff knocks us down to the grave at last, which our life leans on and is preserved by. God owns a debt both to the first Adam and second. To the first he owes the wages of his sin. To the second the reward of his sufferings. The place for full payment of both is the other world, so that except death comes to convey man thither, the wicked, who are the prosperity of the first Adam, will miss that full pay for their sins which the threatenings makes due date, and engage God to perform. The godly also, who are the seed of Christ, these should not receive the whole purchase of his blood, which he would never have shed but upon credit of that promise of eternal life which God gave him for them before the world began. This is the reason why God hath made this day so sure. In it he discharges both bonds. The third branch of the point follows, that it behoves every one to prepare and effectually to provide for this evil day which so unavoidably impends over us, and that upon a twofold account, first in point of duty, secondly in point of wisdom. First, in point of duty. First, it is upon our allegiance to the great God that we provide and arm ourselves against this day. Suppose a subject were trusted with one of his prince's castles, and this man should hear that a pursuant enemy was coming to lay siege to this castle, yet takes no care to lay in arms and provisions for his defense, and so it is lost. How could such a one be cleared of treason? Doth he not basely betray the place, and with it his prince's honor, into his enemy's hand? Our souls are this castle which we are every one to keep for God. We have certain intelligence that Satan hath a design upon them, and the time which he intends to come with all his powers of darkness to be that evil day. Now, as we should be found true to our trust, we are obliged to stand upon our defense and store ourselves with what may enable us to make a vigorous resistance. Secondly, we are obliged to provide for that day as a suitable return for an improvement of the opportunities and means which God affords us for this very end. We cannot, without shameful ingratitude to God, make waste of those helps God gives us in order to this great work. Everyone would cry out upon him that should basely spend that money upon riot in prison, which was sent him to procure his deliverance out of prison, and do we not blush to bestow those talents upon our lust and Satan, which God graciously indulges to deliver us from them, and his rage in a dying hour? What have we Bibles for, and ministers and preaching for, if we mean not to furnish ourselves by them with armor for the evil day? In a word, what is the intent of God in lengthening out our days and continuing us some while here in the land of the living? Was it that we might have time to revel out upon the pleasure of the vain world? Doth he give us our precious time to be employed in catching such butterflies as these earthly honors and riches are? It cannot be. Masters, do not use, if wise, to set their servants about such work as will not pay for the candle they burn in doing it. And truly nothing less than the glorying of God and saving our souls at last can be worth the precious time we spent here. The great God hath a greater end than most men think of their dispensation. If we would judge aright, we should take his own interpretation of his actions, and the Apostle Peter bids us count that the long sufferings of the Lord is salvation. 2 Peter 3:15, which place he quotes out of Paul as to the sense that, though not in the same form of words which in Romans 2:4 are these, or despisest thou the riches of his goodness and forbearance and long-suffering, not knowing that the goodness of God leadeth thee to repentance? From both places we are taught what is the mind of God, and in this language he speaks to us by every moment's patient and inch of time that is granted to us. It is a space given for repentance. God sees that as we see, death and judgment could bring no good news to us. We are in no case to welcome the evil days, and therefore mercy stands up to plead for the poor creatures in God's bosom and begs a little more time may be added to his life, that by this indulgence he may be provoked to repent before he be called to the bar. Thus we come by every day that is continually superadded to our time on earth, and doth not this lay a strong obligation on us to lay out every point of this time unto the same end it is begged for? Secondly, in point of wisdom, the wisdom of a man appeareth most eminently in two things. First, in the matter of his choice and chief care. Secondly, in a due time of this his choice and care. First, a wise man makes choices of that for the subject of his chief care, and endeavor, which is the greatest importance and consequence to him. Fools and children only are intent about toys and trifles. They are as busy and earnest in making of a house of dirt or cards as Solomon was in making of his temple. These poor babies are as adequate to their foolish apprehensions as great enterprises are to wise men. Now such is the importance of the evil day, especially that of death, that it proves a man a fool or wise as he comforts himself to it. The end specifics very action and gives it the name of good or evil or wise or foolish. The solemn day of death is as the end of our days to be the end of all the actions of our life. Such will our life be found at last as it hath been in order to this one day. If the several items of our life, counsels and projects that we have pursued when they shall then be cast up, will amount to a blessed death, then we shall appear to be wise men indeed. But if after all our godly plots and policies for other things we be unprovided for that hour, we must be content to die fools at last, and no such fool as the dying fool. The Christian goes for the fool in the world's account while he lives, but when death comes, the wise world will then confess they miscalled him and shall take it to themselves. We fools counted his life to be madness and his end to be without honor. But how is he now numbered among the children of God, and his lot is among the saints? Therefore have we erred from the way of truth. Wisdom 4, verse 4 and 5. The words are apocryphal, but sinners will find the matter of them canonical. It is true indeed, saints are outwitted by the world and the things of the world, and no marvel. Neither doth it impeach their wisdom any more than it doth a scholar to be excelled by the cobbler in his mean trade. Nature, where it intends higher excellency, is more careless in those things that are inferior, as we see in man, who being made to excel the beast in a rational soul, is himself excelled by some beast or other in all his senses. Thus the Christian may well be surpassed in matters of worldly commerce, because he hath a nobler object in his eye that makes him converse with the things of the world in a kind of non-attendancy. He is not much careful in these matters if he can die well at last and be justified for a wise man at the day of the resurrection. All is well. He thinks it not manners to be unwilling to stay so long for the clearing of his wisdom as God can wait for the vindication of his own glorious nature, which will not appear in its glory till that day when he will convince the ungodly of their hard thoughts and speeches against him. Jude 15. Then they shall, until then they will not be convinced. Secondly, a wise man labors duly in time his care and endeavor for the obtaining of what he proposeth. It is the fool that comes when the market is done, as the evil day is of great concernment in respect of its events, so the placing of our care for it in the right season is of chief importance, and that sure must be before it comes. There are more doors than one at which the messenger may enter that brings evil tidings to us, and at which he will knock we know not. We know not where we shall be addressed, whether at bed or board, whether at home or in the field, whether among our friends that will counsel or and comfort us, or among our enemies that will add weight to our sorrow by their cruelty. We know not when, whether by day or night, many of us not whether in the morning, noon, or evening of our age, as he calls to work at all times of the day, so he doth to bed. It may be while thou art praying or preaching, and it would be sad to go away profaning them in the name of God in them. Possibly when thou art about worse work, death may strike thy quaffling cup out of thy hand while thou art sitting in the ale-house with thy jovial mates, and meet thee as thou art reeling home, and make some ditch thy grave, that as thou livest like a beast, so thou shouldest die like a beast. In a word, we know not the kind of evil God will use as the instrument to stab us, whether some bloody hand of violence he shall do it, or disease out of our bowels and bodies, whether some acute disease or some lingering sickness, whether such a sickness as such shall slay the man while the body is alive, I mean, take the head and deprive us of our reason or not, whether such noisome troubles as shall make our friends afraid to let us breathe on them, or themselves look on us, whether they shall be afflictions aggravated with Satan's temptations and the terrors of our own affrighted conscience or not. Who knows where, when, or what the evil day shall be? Therefore doth God conceal these, that we should provide for all. Caesar would never let his soldiers know when or whither he meant to march, and knowing of these would torment us with distracting fear. The not knowing them should awaken us to a providing care. It is an ill time to caulk the ship when at sea, tumbling up and down in a storm. This should have been looked to when on her seat in the harbor. And as bad it is to begin to trim a soul for heaven when tossing on a sick bed. Things that are done in a hurry are seldom done well. A man called out of his bed at midnight with a dismissal fire on his housetop cannot stand to dress himself in order at another time, but runs down with one stocking half on, maybe, and the other not on at all. There's poor creatures, I am afraid, go in as ill a dress into another world, who begin to provide for it when on a dying bed. Conscience calls them up with a cry of hellfire in their bosoms, but alas, they must go, though they have not time to put their armor on, and so they are put to repent at leisure in hell of their shuffling up a repentancy and haste here. We come to the application of this point. End of chapter 6. Having been read by Peter John Parisi. None of my audios are copyrighted. Please feel free to make as many copies as you desire to the glory of God.